what we'd like to do right now is have both of the panelists give just a quick summary, and I've told them they have 120 seconds, 2 minutes, with which to, a really quick summary of what it is that they're doing, just to set the stage so you get a sense of what their technology is and what they're trying to do. And then we're going to go right into a rapid-fire panel, asking lots of questions and hopefully getting some answers as well. Who would like to go first, between Brendan and Nicholas? Okay, which slide's queued up first? We don't know. So, Brendan, why don't I designate you? Nicholas, why don't I designate you?
That's Imagia. So I'm Nicolas Chapados, co-founder of Imagia. So we're a Montreal-based company that applies deep learning to medical image analysis with a focus on oncology. So we try to personalize the care of cancer patients by applying the latest advances in deep learning and radiomics. We're a spin-off from Yoshua Bengio's lab at University of Montreal, who will be speaking later this afternoon. So the way that this works is that we take as input, as raw material, standard issue medical images, so they can be CT scans, MRIs, PET, optical images. We combine that with clinical data that comes from patient history and feed that into the deep learning algorithms that produces predictions about whether an image contains a lesion, so to detect tumors and to characterize whether the tumor is benign or malignant. We can do personalized screening, so to trigger early diagnostic pathways and not to have to wait so long before we can do a biopsy, for example. And finally, our ultimate objective is to do adaptive treatment, so predicting mutation, resistance, and side effects, and to be able to switch from one drug to another, for example, in a timely way if we detect resistance that is building. So to give you a sense of what we're doing, I'm going to show you a very, very short 45-second video that gives an application in optical colonoscopy. So here the use case is we have the doctor going in, doing a colonoscopy on you, and we want to detect polyps on the colon wall that are precursors to colon cancer and determine if those polyps are benign or malignant. So if you can just click to start the video. Apparently the video did not make through. We actually have a booth downstairs, so interested parties can come and see us later, and we will have the full video to show you. So I'm going to hand it over to Brendan.
Can we advance to the next slide? So hello everyone, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Deep Genomics. And I want you to think about your loved ones and family members. 65% of them are going to face a serious genetic disorder in their lifetime. Okay, 65%. And I'm sure many of you are facing them or have a personal direct connection to somebody who's facing such a situation right now. We all know that it's becoming very cheap to sequence the genome, right, to read out your DNA. And it'll be about 2 years before it'll only cost $20 to do that. But the sad truth is that of the 65%, at this point in time, we can't really do anything about it. We can read their genome, but we can't figure out the genetics of the disease or act on it. And so there's a gap, which I call the genotype-phenotype gap, between our ability to read your genetic code and to act on it in a way that would change the phenotype. Okay? So it's sort of like the elephant in the room. Obama's precision medicine initiative, if you look at how people measure things, they measure it in terms of the number of genomes sequenced, which is basically just a surrogate for money spent. It's not a description of value. There's a big problem, a huge problem facing our society, worth trillions of dollars. And that's what Deep Genomics is seeking to solve. I won't have time to tell you at this moment why artificial intelligence plays a key role, but it has to do with the fact that all of us know about, which is biology is complex. So just measuring data is not enough. you need an inductive reasoning system, a system that understands what's going on inside of the cell and then can relate that from the genotype to the phenotype. So this is our team as of this summer. We were 4 people about a year ago, spin out from the University of Toronto, and seed funding from Bloomberg Beta and True Ventures. We've grown to 20 people. We had 3 interns this past summer, people from Stanford, from MIT, from the University of Cambridge, the University of Toronto, and all around the world. So it's a great team. I'm very, very proud of them. So I'll give you, I don't have time to really tell you about the status of our technology or where we're headed. For the next 4 months, we're actually going to go dark and focus on a particular project that we'll announce in 4 months. But I can give you an interesting glimpse of the kinds of things that are to come. So if you can advance the slide. Okay, so this is a very simple picture. And it's pretty interesting from the point of view of our technology, and it's also quite controversial. So what we did is we looked at a retrospective study of mutations of people with pathogenic or benign mutations. Okay, so people with pathogenic mutations are shown in orange, benign mutations are shown in green. Okay, so these are mutations that have been carefully studied in the clinic, real patients. Okay, so in this analysis, each person there represents 30 live patients, or possibly deceased at this point. At the top, it says artificial intelligence detects a pathogenic mutation. So that's our AI system. So no human involvement. The AI system looks at the mutation, figures out whether or not it's pathogenic. And down below, the AI system detects that it's not pathogenic. So you can see we're doing well in separating out the pathogenic from non-pathogenic. And I'll just conclude with this. I think this will be an interesting topic later that we can discuss. There have been 2 recent studies in the past year looking at human diagnosticians. Okay, so this is you or your loved one goes to a hospital, has your mutation analyzed, or to a diagnostic clinic, or to a commercial entity, has your mutation analyzed. It turns out that between 15 and 65% of the time, 2 different diagnostic labs will disagree on their decision. Okay, so if you just go to one diagnostic lab and have your mutation assessed, it's very likely that a different lab would have a different assessment of your mutation. So it relates to the importance of artificial intelligence and how that fits in with human analysis of the data. Right? So the AI versus the human, or AI as an assistive technology. Very important for the future of deep genomics. Okay, thank you.
Great. So thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, Brendan. Let me begin with this. AJ this morning gave us a dichotomy of prediction versus judgment. Thinking about what you're doing and medicine, we all sort of know medicine thinks it's a science, but many of the practitioners know that that's a simplification. It's as much as an art. And what you're doing is applying some really heavy statistics to something that really hasn't had such a scientific bent before, although we tend to think that it is. So I'm kind of wondering if medicine is actually ready for the AI revolution.
So I can take a shot at this. The videos that you might be able to see if you come down the hall later will show an assisted diagnostics application where we try to automate to some extent the job that a gastroenterologist doctor would do when a patient is undergoing examination. So you might think that doctors would be afraid of losing their jobs by such an application. And yet, when we show this technology that is close to commercialization, we show that to the top gastroenterologists in the world. We show it at medical conferences. We show it at gastrointestinal disease conferences. All of them have the same reaction. Wow, I want this technology. I will do a better job with this technology. And there's 2 ways to interpret this kind of reaction. The first one is we help automate a diagnostic that is actually very hard to make. The kind of visual or optical determination of whether, for example, a polyp is benign or malignant. The top 5% doctors in the world will do this with 95% accuracy, but the average doctors will be only 75% accurate. So the computer can actually help make the average doctor into a top doctor. Our accuracy is above 90%. And the best doctors, you save them time. So
yes, I'll just chime in here. I think, as you were saying, that assistive technology, it's best to think of it as assistive technology. So the AI is not replacing people. The AI is assisting pathologists or assisting medical doctors. And For now, yes. Yeah, yeah. And so I think, and I guess to some degree, there's the question is regulation. So the FDA...
It's also culture, but it's also consumer adoption. But
yeah, regulation and also professional societies.
Right.
Yeah.
So if medicine, this ephemeral institution of healthcare, is ready for AI, if it is, are patients?
Yeah, so that really comes down to trust, right? So if a computer recommended that you get a surgery, would you go out and get the surgery, or would you want some other, intelligent agent to help you make that decision? And I think so trust takes time to develop. 40 years ago, if you'd said to somebody, we're going to have a computer land your airplane, they probably would not have believed it was a good idea. They would not trust it. And now, of course, we all go through this all the time. Computers land airplanes.
Okay, you're not allowed to use the old autopilot ruse. We're all professionals in the room. So we know that someone has deliberately programmed the autopilot system to do exactly what we want it to do under certain conditions. And we all know that the way that deep learning or techniques work, that nobody has deliberately programmed what to do. It's made this estimation for itself for reasons that are so spooky that even some of the best professionals can't even understand it. So how is it you're going to knock on the door to regulators around the world and explain to them that we give up causality but we increase accuracy?
So the big question for now is never to completely replace doctors. It's really, in our application, we view that technology as a second viewer type application where we can help complement the doctor's judgment. We can bring attention to areas where the human should pay attention, and we still rely on the doctor to provide the explanations and the communication with the patient. So right now, it's still, I view the transition as being very progressive. Maybe in 10 years, we will have 95% full automation, but today, it's not the case.
So we spent a lot of time thinking about this, and as a researcher over the last decade, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I want everybody in the room to ask yourself this question right now. Why are you here today? Okay, you're going to come up with some explanation, and I guarantee that for 60% of the people in the room, your explanation is bullshit. Okay, so humans are notoriously good at lying to themselves and, of course, lying to others, not intentionally, but it's just the way we are. We rationalize. We make a decision, and we come up with a rationalization. So for AI in healthcare, what we need to do is develop systems that accurately recapitulate data that supports decisions, okay, and then provide that to the humans. I think it's just a little bit of a competition. Like the humans think they're well-equipped to rationalize the decisions they make. Well, let's just test them on it. Let's give them AI systems that can provide them with information and data and challenge them, okay? You can make the decision, but here's the prediction and the data that supports what the AI system believes the decision should be. Okay, so sort of work away at the rationalization end of things in terms of experts. Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen.
How will AI fit into the economic model of healthcare? Who will pay for it?
So that's one of the difficulties that I think make AI in healthcare so different from other applications of AI. Is you need to figure out reimbursement, and that means you need a really good understanding of what we call the continuum of care. So how a patient gets treated in the hospital and what are all the clinical actions that are being performed. Where are the choke points within the clinical system where doctors spend a lot of time or tests cost a lot of money? What part of that can be automated, and what part of those in payer systems that work, that reimburse by Act, how do you figure out whether a given action that is being automated can be worth issuing a new reimbursement code for, so that the insurance company will pay? That can take years, and you need to plan it out. If you're a startup, you need to plan it out in your business plan that it may take years before patients can actually get treated with your technology because nobody will be willing to pay for it?
Yeah, I think it's good for the audience to know there's sort of two main models. One is fee for service, where basically a hospital clinic gets paid for the number of tests it performs, whether or not those tests are useful, versus more of a pay for value system where you're paid, the clinic or the hospital's paid if the patient gets well. So I think shifting to pay for value is going to be important. And actually to address that, it's in the best interest of the insurance companies that we switch to pay for value. They actually do want to help people and do so at reduced costs. So working with, there are some insurance companies that handle the whole pipeline. So right from insurance through to managing hospitals, through to direct patient care, nurses and physicians, as well as all the genetic testing and other kinds of testing and image analysis. So I think one way forward is to focus on those entities where they can handle the whole pipeline, so they know that if they triple their costs over here, but they reduce their costs downstream by a factor of 10 or 100, that it's a good decision for them. And they can also save lives while doing it. They can work out of those numbers. And they like probabilities too. So, yeah.
Okay, so we have regulatory approval. We've got the medical practitioners accepting it. We've got the patients accepting it. You have an economic model. So you're going to take your prize technology and knock on the door of the patent office, get a patent, and then create a toll booth for humanity that they have to pay with which to save their lives?
That's scary.
It's meant to sound scary.
So the values, I can speak about the values of Deep Genomics. So when we set up the company, the reason we started the company was we realized the technology that we were developing could not be reproduced anywhere else, and if we wanted to change medicine, we needed to do it ourselves. But the values in our company, first and foremost, have to do with the well-being of humans. And so we're not going to hold information back if by releasing that information it could improve health. So, for example, academic researchers who want to get access to information to develop new technologies or new tests or new mechanisms of disease, we'll provide that information. At the same time, our goal is to become the dominant genome informatics company in the world. So there's definitely a notion of proprietary information and intellectual property. The way we think about this is that we're ahead of all existing companies in this area, so we're just going to stay ahead of them. So our technology will just be always a couple steps ahead, and we think we can do it at this point in time. We'll see.
And to echo what Brendan said, there is right now a clash in culture between the AI machine learning research community and the medical research community. In that, in the past couple of years, AI research has been incredibly open, with even commercial research groups releasing in the open data, code, and so on, very, very openly, with very little patents. Whereas the traditional way of developing medical products has been patents. And the chief reason for that is that you need to take your product through very expensive clinical trials and regulatory approvals, and you need to basically show regulatory authorities that your product is safe and effective. And that costs a lot of money. Traditionally, no investor is willing to finance those trials unless you can guarantee that you have exclusivity on the results. And this came through patents, and we're seeing a clash of that right now.
Okay, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to ask one final question, and it's this. For your technologies to work, you need data, a lot of it. Traditionally, privacy law obstructs the sharing and reuse of the data, particularly in the area of medicine. How are we, as a society, going to overcome that problem?
I can go first. So,
I'm a little bit nervous that there was so much silence.
So deep genomics, so genotype-phenotype gap, how do you connect the code of the DNA to the phenotype? It actually pertains mainly to cellular mechanisms, right? Understanding how changes in DNA will change what's going on in the cell, and that'll change how cells interact, how tissues are formed, interneural signaling in the brain, how those are consequences of genetics. So that's actually not a patient-specific question. Right? It's like the laws of biochemistry, trying to mimic those with machine learning. And so the data sets we need really, for the most part, are not patient-specific data sets. So that's not an issue for us. So the idea is you build up a system that's capable of accurately, reliably, in a trustworthy way, recapitulating how genetic changes lead to changes in cells and tissues. Once you've got that system, You can now use it as a model. You can look at your patient and take your patient's DNA and map it to something that's much more informative about what might be wrong with the patient or how you could correct it. And then you look at the patient-specific part. So you could sort of think of it as instead of needing 1 million genomes, using our technology, you only need 1,000. So it's like an amplification factor in terms of patient-specific genomes. So it reduces the number of patient-specific information that's needed. Yeah.
And I can say that for imaging data analysis, exactly the same thing applies. We can distill the contents of images and recognize features on it with no patient identifiable information. So we can just get raw images, strip out all the patient, the key identifying information. As long as we keep outcome data and things like that, we're absolutely fine. So they're especially in countries like Canada that have government-run healthcare systems, the NHS in the UK is spearheading similar initiatives as well. There is more initiative towards open data, even in healthcare, given that proper precautions are taken. And we can only see that as being beneficial for society, because more data helps models become better.
Great. There's so many more questions we'd all like to ask, but we can't. We're out of time. So join me in thanking the panel. Thank you very much.